I was secretly making $1,420,000 when my ex-wife filed papers. She then wed my childhood friend, and it didn't happen all at once. That's what people like to think, right? That there's a single moment when everything splits down the middle like a cracked plate. But for me, it was quieter, slower, like watching a house settle and groan before one day the floor gives out and you're just falling. I still remember the way the light used to hit our kitchen in the mornings before we stopped noticing things like light. There was this soft golden hour where everything looked honest. The tiles warm, the plants on the windowsill leaning into the sun like they were hopeful. Back then, she'd hum when she made coffee. Just little bits of melody, nothing in particular, but it made the room feel like something was alive in it besides us. That stopped too. At some point, she started scrolling through her phone while the coffee brewed, leaning on the counter like it exhausted her, and I stopped looking up from my laptop. Or maybe I stopped looking because she already had. That's hard to tell now. It's not that we hated each other. That would have been simpler. It was more like we were both ghosts in a house still pretending to be a home. The business thing, my thing, had started as a side project. Just some dumb code I wrote during long nights when sleep felt like a stranger. It was meant to be small. A platform for freelancers to pool resources, share gigs, split contracts, undercut agencies in a way that felt almost revolutionary. And it worked, not all at once, not in some fireworks and headlines kind of way. But the user base grew, word spread, VCs sniffed around, people wanted in. I didn't tell her right away, at first because I didn't think it mattered, then because I knew it did. We were already drifting when the first real money started coming in. I remember the exact moment it hit my account, 7 figures, just like that. I sat there at my desk, staring at the number like it was written in a foreign language. Then I closed the laptop and made dinner like nothing had changed. I didn't want the money to become a conversation. I didn't want to perform gratitude or generosity or success. I wanted it to be mine, just mine. That sounds selfish. It probably is. But it was the first thing in years that felt like it belonged to me. We had this ritual back then. Once a week, usually Thursdays, we'd sit on the couch with takeout and try to pretend we still liked each other. Sometimes we watched old sitcoms. Sometimes she scrolled while I half listened to a podcast. The silences between us got longer, not angry silences, just empty ones. One night, out of nowhere, she said, "You're always somewhere else lately." She wasn't accusing me. That was the worst part. Her voice was soft, tired, like she'd already accepted whatever answer I might give. "I'm just busy," I said. "With what?" And I lied, something about freelance work. Client deadlines, boring things she wouldn't want to hear about. She nodded like she believed me, or maybe like she didn't care enough to push. Sometimes I wonder if she did know, not the specifics maybe, but the shift. The way I started pulling into myself like a hermit crab with a shiny new shell. Maybe she felt it before I did. There were nights I'd watch her sleep and feel this unbearable guilt ballooning in my chest. Not because I was hiding money, but because I'd stopped seeing her, like really seeing her. She still had that little scar on her cheek from when she fell off her bike at 10. I used to love tracing it with my thumb. I used to know her smell, her rhythms, her way of exhaling just before she was about to say something important. Now I couldn't even remember the last time we kissed without our mouths tasting like obligation. The last time we had sex, it felt like we were mimicking ourselves. Like two actors going through the motions of a scene they'd done too many times. I rolled off and stared at the ceiling and felt more alone than I ever had in my life. I think that's when I knew we were done, not because we weren't trying, but because we were still trying and it didn't matter. That's a kind of grief no one prepares you for. The night she slid the envelope across the kitchen table, the light was different. It was cloudy. Everything looked gray and flat. She didn't even cry, just said, "I think we've both checked out and I don't want to keep living like roommates." I wanted to ask if there was someone else, but I didn't because I didn't want to lie when she asked me the same. Not about a person, no, but about the life I'd built without her. The company, the success, the relief I felt at the thought of not having to pretend anymore. I opened the envelope, legalese, a checklist of endings. "Okay," I said, and my voice didn't even tremble. She nodded, got up, walked to the sink. I sat there staring at the spot where her hands had been, and that's when the silence roared, not around me, inside me, like something ancient and frozen cracking wide open. I didn't eat that night, didn't turn on the lights. I lay on the couch, curled in my hoodie, listening to the radiator hiss and the distant hum of traffic and the small, domestic sounds of the life I was about to lose. 3 weeks later, James called. I hadn't heard from him in a while, not since the startup had taken over my life. We used to be inseparable, bike rides through the neighborhood when we were 10, shared crushes in middle school, band gigs in college. He was the only person who ever really saw me when I didn't know who I was yet. He didn't mention her, just asked if I wanted to grab a drink. I said maybe, I didn't mean it, then I saw the photo. Someone had tagged her, her head on his shoulder, hair curled, smiling in a way she hadn't smiled in our house in years, his arm around her waist, casual, intimate, familiar. I stared at the screen like it was a dream I hadn't had yet. My stomach dropped out like an elevator free-falling. I couldn't move for a minute, couldn't think. Then came the wedding photos. Beachside, her in a loose white dress, barefoot, laughing, him in rolled-up sleeves. Everyone looked like they belonged in a magazine. I was not invited. I didn't even know they were together. I closed the app, opened my laptop, pulled up my financial dashboard. There it was, $1,420,000 in black and white, and I'd never felt poorer. That night, I sat on the floor of my office with a bottle of scotch I'd been saving for something good. I drank it straight from the neck, watching the cursor blink on a blank document. I wanted to write something, a letter, a confession, a scream. Instead, I just stared. And for the first time in my life, I didn't know who I was without someone else's version of me reflected back. That's when it broke, not with noise, not with fury. Just a quiet snap somewhere deep inside. And after that, everything changed. After that night, the days blurred, not in a poetic way, not some dreamy haze where you drift and think about things with melancholy music playing in the background. No, it was more like being underwater too long. Everything was slow, thick, muffled. My skin felt too tight. My thoughts came at weird angles like they didn't belong to me. I stopped answering messages. Most people didn't notice. That was the thing about being someone who always had a lot going on. People assume your silence is productivity. They think you're in the zone, killing it, building empires. No one suspects that you're sitting in your own sweat-stained hoodie, surrounded by crusted mugs and unopened mail, staring at the same 3 seconds of a paused YouTube video for 45 minutes. I slept on the couch for 2 weeks. Couldn't stand the bed. Couldn't stand how much of her was still in it, the indent on the left side, the perfume still clinging to the pillowcases like it didn't get the memo she was gone. The weirdest part was that the money didn't help. Like at all, I thought maybe it would. I kept waiting for that dopamine hit, the one you're supposed to feel when you finally have FU money, when you cross the finish line, but I'd already crossed it and hadn't noticed. Now I was just standing there out of breath with no one cheering, no one even watching. I bought a new place anyway, a penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows and furniture that looked like it had been designed by people who hated sitting. It was supposed to feel like a reset. A clean slate, but every room echoed, not because of the size, but because I didn't bring anything personal. No photos, no rugs, nothing that could hold memory. Just clean lines, blank walls, and silence you could feel in your teeth. There was a smart fridge. It told me when I was out of eggs. I hadn't bought eggs in weeks. I didn't even bring the cat. She took it, or maybe I let her, I don't remember. There's a version of this story where I immediately fly to Bali and get a tan and sleep with people whose names I forget and eat things I can't pronounce and post cryptic quotes on Instagram about rebirth. But the truth, I barely left the building. I ordered takeout and let it rot. Half the time I couldn't taste it anyway. There were moments, though, little sharp ones, like when I saw her post a story, just a second-long clip of her pouring coffee in James's kitchen. His kitchen, the same way she used to pour it in ours. Same pour, same hand, same angle. I watched it 10 times. I think I was trying to prove to myself that she still existed, that they weren't a dream, that I'd really been replaced and not just left behind. The rage came in flashes, not at her, not even at him, at myself for not being what she needed, for not speaking up when things were cracking, for retreating into that startup like it was a bunker, for choosing silence over honesty, for thinking I could build something alone and then be surprised when I ended up alone. And the shames, that was quieter, meaner. It crept in during the lulls, while brushing my teeth, while waiting for my coffee to brew, while lying on the couch at 3:11 a.m., the same podcast on repeat because I couldn't fall asleep without human voices murmuring in the background. It was around then I found the coffee shop. I didn't go looking for it, I just wandered one morning, unable to stand my own kitchen anymore. The way everything was too modern, too empty, like a catalog layout with no fingerprints. It was a little hole-in-the-wall place. Wooden tables with mismatched chairs, chalkboard menu, plants hanging from the ceiling like they were mid-conversation. It smelled like over-roasted beans and cinnamon. The barista, Sam, was maybe my age, maybe older, hard to tell. She had laugh lines and inked arms and that look people have when they've already survived something bigger than you. She looked me over like she could read the ache off my skin. "Rough night or rough life?" she asked, handing me a chipped mug. I blinked, smiled without meaning to. "Bit of both." She nodded. "It's always both." I started going there every morning, at first for the coffee, then for the stillness, then for her. We didn't talk much, not at first, just nods, the occasional one-liner, the easy kind of silence that doesn't press on you. She didn't ask what I didn't try to small talk me into confessing anything, and for that I was absurdly grateful. Some days I sat there for hours just watching the steam rise from my cup. I brought my laptop once, opened it, closed it again, just couldn't. I was still pretending to be a CEO on paper, but inside, I felt like an imposter squatting in a body that didn't fit anymore. One afternoon, she handed me my usual and said, "You ever write anything, or are you just always editing your thoughts?" I looked at her, caught off guard. "I used to," I said. She shrugged. "You should again. You've got the face of someone with too many stories in their throat." That line stuck to me, too many stories in my throat. I opened notes on my phone that night, typed something, deleted it, typed again, just a sentence. Then another, not code, just thoughts, fragments, truths I hadn't said out loud. Things like, I loved her more when she stopped loving me, and I missed the version of myself that used to believe in us. I didn't send them, not to her, not to James, just kept them, let them pile up like driftwood. I started sleeping again, not well, but more. I stopped flinching when I saw her name. I let the ache in without feeding it, just let it sit. It had nowhere else to go after all. And one morning, as the sun came up behind the glass walls of that too-bright apartment, I said out loud to no one, "I don't think I'm okay." And then, just as quietly, "But I think I will be." That was the first time I'd believed anything I'd said in months. It had been maybe 7 months since she left, though I stopped counting after the 4th. The seasons blurred in that way they do when you're not really participating in your own life, just watching it like reruns of a show you used to love but now half hate because it reminds you of who you used to be. I was still going to the coffee shop. Sam had become something between a friend and a witness, someone who didn't ask for the whole story but could read the margins. We didn't call what we were anything. That felt too heavy. We just existed near each other. Sometimes I'd stay after closing, sitting on the counter while she swept up, talking about everything except the things that really mattered. One night she looked at me and said, "You ever gonna talk to them, or just keep pretending they're ghosts?" I blinked. I don't need to talk to them. That's not what I asked. I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing came out because I had been pretending that they were in another dimension, some other city, some other timeline, not here, not walking around the same streets I did, not holding hands in places we used to call ours. Then, like it was scripted, I saw them. A Thursday evening, a warm one, early spring, the kind of dusk where everything feels pink and forgiving. I was out for a walk, headphones in, not listening to anything, just trying to trick my body into forgetting it was tired of surviving. And then there they were, coming out of some little Italian place I'd taken her to for our second anniversary. James was laughing, her hand was on his back, the same way it used to be on mine. They looked good together. Not perfect, not cinematic, just real, at ease, and that somehow made it worse. I don't know what made me cross the street. Maybe I was tired of feeling like a coward. Maybe I wanted to see if I still had a voice. Maybe I just wanted them to know I wasn't dead. I stopped a few feet away. James noticed me first. He froze like a kid caught styling. She turned slowly. Her smile didn't die on her face, it just faded into something more careful. "Hey," I said, my voice too normal, like we were running into each other at a grocery store, like this was fine. She stepped forward. "You look good." I almost laughed, the absurdity of it, the small talk after all of it. "Thanks," I said. "You too." There was a silence then, not the awkward kind, the honest kind. The kind where everyone knows there's a different conversation under the one you're having. "I didn't know," I said finally, "about you too." James winced. "We didn't plan it, man, it just happened after." "After?" I echoed. "You sure about that timeline?" He didn't answer. She looked at the ground. I took a breath that felt like glass in my lungs. "I think what hurts most is that I lost both of you at once," I said. "You were supposed to be, both of you, my people." She looked up. Her eyes weren't cold, they were sad, and I hated that. I didn't want her sadness. I wanted her anger, her guilt, something easier to hold. "I'm sorry," she said, and I believe she meant it. And James, he didn't say anything. He just nodded, slow, like maybe this was his penance, letting me look him in the eye and see the truth there. "Are you happy?" I asked her. She hesitated, not out of guilt, out of honesty. "I think I'm learning how to be." I nodded. "Yeah, me too." And that was it. No screaming, no throwing punches, no poetic closure. Just three people standing in the middle of a sidewalk, bathed in streetlight and old ache. I turned to walk away. James said my name once, like he wasn't sure what came next. I didn't turn around. I went straight to the shop. Sam was inside, counting tips. She looked up, saw my face. "So?" "I saw them," I said. My voice was shaking now. Not before, not with them, but now, safe. Yeah. And I sat down on the floor, back against the counter, let my head fall into my hands. I didn't fall apart. She didn't say anything for a minute, then she sat beside me, close but not touching. "That's something," she said. I nodded, swallowed. "It's everything." And it was, because for the first time I didn't want to go back, not to her, not to who I was with her, not even to the version of me I'd been before the company, before the silence, before the money changed everything and nothing at the same time. I just wanted to move forward, even if it was slow, even if I had no idea what the next step looked like. I sat there in that quiet, in that shop that smelled like burnt beans and possibility, and I let myself feel all of it, not the clean version, not the cinematic montage, just the real, gritty ache of letting go of what might have been. And underneath it, just barely, the first flicker of something new. Not happiness, but hope. It didn't get better all at once. There's no clean ending to grief, no sunrise moment where the music swells and you exhale and suddenly feel healed. That's the lie we've sold ourselves, that recovery is cinematic, that clarity is loud. But the truth, it came in fragments, in small, unremarkable moments. Like when I changed the sheets without thinking of her, or when I passed that Italian place and didn't flinch, or when I realized I'd gone a whole day without checking her profile, without rehearsing some fake version of our past that painted me as the saint, her as the villain, and James as the devil in my childhood skin. I didn't forgive them, not exactly, but I stopped needing to. Forgiveness, I think, is just a fancy word for release, and I finally let go, not with a speech, not with some dramatic symbolic act. I just didn't carry it anymore. One day I picked up the weight and it wasn't there. I sold the company, not for the highest number I could squeeze out of it, but for enough to live, enough to build something smaller, something slower. I didn't want to chase scale anymore. I wanted to chase stillness. It felt like the more I'd succeeded, the more I'd disappeared, and I was done disappearing. I moved not far, just out of the sky. A little house, one story, just off a quiet street where birds wake you up before your phone can. No concierge, no fob, no echo in the halls. The kind of place where the walls aren't insulated from the sound of rain, where the wind comes through the windows and doesn't ask for permission. I bought plants, killed the first few, then read how to keep them alive. I planted tomatoes that grew crooked, basil that got eaten by something in the soil, but I kept trying. Sam came over more often, at first just to hang out. She'd bring over muffins she pretended were homemade, and we'd sit in the backyard, not talking about anything important. Sometimes we'd share stories in pieces, not the polished versions, but the messy ones. The ones we used to edit out of ourselves. One night she looked at me and said, "You're different now." Different how? Quieter, she said, but more here. I didn't know what to say to that, so I didn't say anything. I just reached over and rested my hand on her thigh, and she didn't move it away. That's how it started, nothing dramatic, just presence, just showing up. Not for some grand romance, but for the ordinary magic of being seen and still being chosen. I started writing again, not code, not content, just truth, quiet truth, essays no one would read, paragraphs that didn't need to be shared, things like "I don't need to win anymore, I just want to feel real," or "Some losses don't scar you, they plant you." I got an old desk from a thrift shop, sanded it down myself, put it by the window, wrote there every morning with cheap coffee and soft music and the sun crawling in like it belonged to me. One afternoon I got a letter, not from her, from James. It was short. I don't expect a reply, I just needed to say, "I miss you, and I hope someday that doesn't have to be a betrayal." I sat with it for a long time, thought about writing back, didn't. Not because I was angry, but because some things don't need a sequel. Some things end. And you learn to live with the echo of them, like a song you used to love, but now only hear when you're passing through a store. You don't stop remembering, you just stop hurting. The pain becomes part of the terrain, a landmark. You drive past it on the way to somewhere new. Now most mornings I wake up with the light. No alarm, no rush. I make coffee, real coffee, grind the beans, boil the water, listen to the sounds. Sometimes Sam is here, sometimes not. Sometimes I'm alone and not lonely. Sometimes I still miss them both. But now I miss them like a home I used to live in, one that doesn't fit me anymore, but that I'm grateful for, because it held me once. Because it taught me what to build better next time. I don't know what comes next. But for the first time in a long time, I want to find out. And that's enough. That's more than enough.